I'm Nathan Ponchard, this is Chasing Cars, and this is the 2025 version of the Hyundai i30 hatch. Now, this generation of i30 PD hatch dates back to 2017 and last had a facelift in late 2020. But this one is prompted by the fact that it is no longer built in South Korea. It actually comes from Hyundai's plant in Czechia, which is the one that also makes the i30N. So this i30N line is not only inspired by its big brother hot hatch Big Daddy, it also comes from the same plant. Changes for 2025 include these new headlights with these new DRLs, new LED lighting infills, new grille, new air intakes at the front here. It has 4 new colors, 2 of which are really cool, this cypress green and a really dark sailing blue. This is ultimate red. So, oh my God, they're not just all white, gray and silver. It has these cool new sort of star pattern 18-inch alloys, 225/40 ZR18 Michelin Pilot Sport 4s. So this N line is very much inspired by the N above it, and with its steering tune, its suspension tune, multi-link rear suspension, all that sort of stuff, the way that it drives, as we shall discover, is very much warm to hottish, even though you may not describe the new engine that's under the bonnet that way. Being from Europe, it has the European 1.5 litre direct injection turbo petrol 4-cylinder. It has a little bit less power than the old 2 litre, but it is all about fuel efficiency, and it's meant to be 20% more fuel efficient. So still a reasonably good performer, again, as we shall discover, but it is about pushing this car that is now 8 years old into the future with a degree of efficiency. The thing is though, is that we're only getting the N line. There's no more base, no more active, no more elite, no diesel, none of those things, just the N line. This is the N line premium, which is $41,000 before on-road costs. There's an N line that's the non-premium, that's $36,000 and doesn't have this glass panoramic roof, among a few other things. But that is it, and there's no base model coming underneath this. If you want a small Hyundai hatch, you buy a Kona.
Chasing Cars, honest reviews of your next car.
Brought to you by
Budget Direct.
Inside the cabin of the i30 hatch, it is very familiar and really quite similar to the i30N in that it doesn't have too much over embellishment. It all is sort of generally matte charcoal, and I think that kind of fits the sporty vibe that they're going for. Like, this could have cloth infilled in the dash and make it look a little bit sort of more of an elite spec car, but I don't think it necessarily needs that. This top here is kind of padded. The doors here aren't necessarily soft, but they're nice and smooth and matte feeling. The finish of the interior of this is actually really good. The premium has 12-way electric adjustment here, plus electric lumbar support, seat heating, but no cooling like in a Kona Premium. So we are looking at a mid-40s drive away point here for this vehicle, but it doesn't have seat cooling. Being the updated i30 hatch means that there's a few changes in here to what is essentially an 8-year-old interior that still looks fine and I think works really functionally. The instrument pod here is a 10.25-inch digital display. This premium version here has a 10.25-inch touchscreen here, although the lower spec model only has 8 inches. There's a USB-C plug in the front here and USB-C plugs in the back. However, the Apple CarPlay and Android Auto has to run through a cord, and it goes through a USB-A down here. So that is a bit of a shame. It's a pity that it's not wireless. It does have wireless charging down here. That sort of stuff is all kept pace pretty good. The storage can fit a full coconut water or a 1.25 litre bottle in the doors, which is unusual in modern times and especially in a Korean car, but you still can in the i30 hatch. The rest of the interior is very much inspired by the aesthetic of the i30N, meaning a lot of matte charcoal. There's these little sort of aluminium sections in the vents that sort of look kind of nice. The stitching on the steering wheel, there's a leather with perforation around here, red stitching here, red stitching on the gear lever, perforated leather on the top of the gear lever. The seats are suede with leather pointed sections on the outside with red stitching. It's all actually pretty plush. We've also got alloy pedals down there that look really great. All those little details really make up for the fact that, yeah, this isn't the latest interior, but I think that's actually a really good thing because you can see all the controls, all the HVAC is all right in front of you. The screen here is really easy to use with a row of buttons underneath and a huge volume knob there. All of this, all the controls of the past are fine. Please leave them alone. Please don't get rid of them. That's my opinion. Let us know what you think, but I personally am completely sick of having to delve through ridiculous screens because they're cheaper to make and cheaper to make the interior design. Now, there is one thing about this though that really infuriates me. I live on a train line and I am triggered by the smell of diesel, and the recirc button on the HVAC here automatically turns itself to fresh when it decides that you need fresh air, you've been breathing your own air for too long, at which point in the last 2 days it's done it in a car wash, in a tunnel, and this morning behind a diesel truck accelerating up a hill. And every time it happens, I'm like, you can imagine the word that I yell at this thing, this HVAC is triggering. So that is one reason why I probably wouldn't buy this car, just that button. But I just think that is nonsensical. However, I will stop talking about that now. The stereo is only 6 speakers, but sounds really strong, even though it's just a bass thing. It doesn't have any name. It's just 6 speakers and it's fine. The driving position is great, down in a seat, nice and huggy, great steering wheel, completely round, all the things of the past, pretty good vision, pretty good side vision. Nothing really too much of a problem. The front passenger seat has manual height adjustment, and in the back, while it isn't anywhere near as spacious as a Kona, it's still eminently doable. The backrest could be a little bit more upright, I think. There could be a little bit more toe room and leg room, but given that this is now a sporty car, a genuine warm hatch, rather than being the full utility vehicle, which is why you buy a Kona, you get this interior with this full panoramic sunroof in the end line, and really nice treatment, nice finish, and just a nice place to be. For 2025, the i30 hatch has been updated with its safety systems and now has forward collision avoidance assist, junction turning, multi-collision braking, has rear occupant alert. This premium also brings highway driving assist, has a couple of extra features over the standard car, and it also has Hyundai BlueLink connected services, which will contact the authorities if you snack the car. It has over-the-air software updates. It has navigation-based smart cruise control. So even though we're in an 8-year-old car, this is very much up to date and reasonably well calibrated when it comes to all of these safety systems, apart from the lane assist, which you do turn off here and is still a bit crap. From rear on, it's a similar story to the front, where the light shapes are very similar, but the infill is completely different with this new LED V shape, these little dots in the middle here. The whole rear bar is new. All of this diffuser treatment at the bottom for the end line. We've got twin pipes here because we are in a turbo. We have Hyundai's new 2-dimensional badging, as we see here, new side skirts, all that sort of stuff does surprisingly modernize what is essentially an 8-year-old body shape. And it's kind of a reminder that this i30 is still quite a handsome car. In here, there is one change, and that is it has a 395 litre boot, which is huge, but it's because it doesn't have a spare wheel anymore. It only has a tyre mobility kit, which is here, because that's what Europeans like, perhaps not Australians, but it does give it an underfloor section here. And you know what? If you want a full-size spare, you buy a Kona. The facelifted N-Line's 1.5 litre direct injection mild hybrid turbo petrol is definitely quite different to sit behind compared to the previous 2 litre naturally aspirated engine, which was also direct injection, and the 1.6 litre turbo petrol. That was the previous N-Line engine. So what we have here is essentially the updated N-Line, but with an engine that is sort of the replacement for the one that was in the base, the Active and the Elite. The outputs are 117 kilowatts at 5,500 RPM, which is 3 kilowatts less than the old 2 litre and 33 less than the old 1.6 turbo. But the figure that matters here is the torque. It's 253 Newton meters from 1,500 to 3,500 RPM. That's 50 Newton meters more than the old 2 litre and only 12 Newton meters less than the 1.6 turbo. And the thing about this 1.5 mild hybrid turbo is that it'll run on 91 octane and E10. So not only does it meet Euro 6D emissions, it also runs on the cheapest and most eco-friendly fuel. So that's really where it's positioned. The combined fuel consumption figure is 5.6 litres per 100. We've averaged 7.2 over hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kilometres in this car. So we really have been pushing it to its extent. We've done a lot of freeway driving in it. We've also done quite a lot of city schlepping in it. So the 1.5 turbo does have, I think it's a synthesized sound in the background. It does give it a little bit of a gurgle, but it's not too extreme. It actually makes it sound quite nice. And instead of the old 6-speed torque converter auto in the previous 2 litre, and the other dual clutch that was in the 1.6 turbo, we now have a 7-speed dry dual clutch that is unique for this engine and other smaller Hyundai engines. It is very low geared in first and second and third. I think first runs out around 50 k's an hour. It really gives it a haul off the line. If you overtake on a country road, you're already in fourth gear. So sometimes you can put your foot down and ask for everything that the i30 has, and it only goes back to fourth. So it doesn't really feel like it has the country road overtaking that the previous 1.6 had. Hyundai claims 0 to 100 in 8.6 seconds, and I think that up to about 100, that is where this engine's forte is. The previous 1.6 in a dual clutch did somewhere in the sort of mid to high 7s, maybe even a little bit better than that, and the 2 litre was well into the 9s, so maybe even close to 10. So it is an improvement compared to the base one, but it's not as sporty as the old N-Line. I suppose it does sound good though, it is efficient, the idle stop system does work pretty good. The dual clutch is, I suppose, not preferable compared to a torque converter automatic because it doesn't give you that instant, easy, effortless around town driving. It does require a little bit of concentration to get used to. It defaults to eco mode, and eco mode has a coasting setting as well, where when you back off the throttle, it'll drop the tacho to 0 and say coasting underneath it. So it's very environmentally focused, but it does have that torque, and you do get used to how much accelerator you need to give to make the new i30 N-Line quite a drivable car. It actually is probably a better performer than you think, but like I said, higher speeds, not entirely its forte. As for the dynamics of it, we have pretty much a sub-N i30 here. It has 225/40 ZR18 Michelin Pilot Sport 4 tyres, those really cool alloys, so tons of grip, multi-link rear suspension, tuned suspension that very much is firm. It gives a very firm ride. It's not unyieldingly firm, but it is firm. This is, I'd say, warm to hot hatch level of tuning for a regular to warm drivetrain, but it definitely feels sub-N in the way that it drives, and that's great. Excellent steering wheel, excellent seats, great turn-in, really good grip. Handling balance, it really sits on its outside back wheel. If you chuck it into a roundabout, it'll even drift the tail a little bit. It has a little bit of a tail drift on lifted throttle. It is very adjustable and fun, and it's all there. Whether the new drivetrain is entirely up to those dynamics, but you know what, you can step beyond that and go to the end. So this is still very much the i30 as good as it's always been. It's just a different kind of i30, probably one that's better suited for where we are now in 2024 and beyond, rather than the focus that was of this car and its drivetrains when it launched in 2017. So given that we are talking about a car here from 2017 that's having yet another lease on life to go, approaching a decade old or more, because it might live even longer than that, because Kona is now Hyundai's mainstay. The i30 hatch has very much been sidelined to be almost a niche periphery kind of car. It still is keeping up with all of Hyundai's latest safety systems. The ones that I will refer to is the lane keep assist, which is easily turn offable on the steering wheel, but you kind of need to do it pretty much every time. It is not entirely great the way that it sort of follows lines and snatches about, just like most of those systems. It sucks. And the other one is the speed limit alert, which you can numb pretty easily. This one has been programmed into the star here, so you just go star on the steering wheel, speed limit off, and it's off, which is important because that's also annoying. So here in modern times, we're talking about safety systems of what you do when you want to disable them rather than what they bring to the table. That said, the collision alert is not too intrusive. The forward AEB actually works really well. Sometimes you can almost use it like the car's doing your own braking. You can just bounce off the AEB. It actually is surprisingly attuned to driving in the cut and thrust of Sydney traffic, which means Europe as well, given this is a European tuned and built car. So the Hyundai i30 has kept pace with those sort of things, and as we've talked about in the interior, there's something really quite refreshing about the fact that it hasn't just gone to all screens. This is still a car when it used to be an easily accessible and work-outable car, rather than spending all of your time trying to work out where to find stuff in the layers of electronic rubbish that we seem to be increasingly dealing with, which is thankfully not an issue in the facelifted Hyundai i30 hatch. There's something to be said for extending the life of these combustion engine cars way beyond their lifespans of the past. We're now 8 years old here for the PD i30 hatch, and yet there's something quite charming about some of the older school controls and the things that it's kept that are far preferable to this transition towards too many screens, too much over complexity. So the simplicity of this vehicle really is quite alluring. It still looks handsome, in this case with the N-line suspension, meaty steering, great handling, adjustable chassis, all of that bodes really well for it. The engine isn't as strong as the old 1.6 turbo, but it is pretty well polished, I think. It is a shame it doesn't come with a manual, to be honest, but given the efficiency and the general driving characteristics of it, you do get used to driving the dual clutch in this car. It has a few little idiosyncrasies, but you do get used to it. And as for some of the other things that I've bitched about in the interior, really, like, who cares? It's all here. This car here, the N-Line Premium, about 45,000 drive away, seems like a fair wedge for what is essentially only a warm hatch. If you don't want to go the full premium, the standard N-Line is around 40,000 drive away. But if you think that an i30N starts at 54 drive away and goes all the way up to 61,000, there is a significant difference between the two. And not everyone wants the hardcore nature of an i30N, which gives the N-Line a nice niche of its own. And given that these hatches are disappearing, and the fact that the sportier versions are pretty much vanished, the fact that Hyundai has chosen to just make the i30 hatch a bit of a driver's car, I think probably needs to be celebrated more than anything. It's not the greatest hatch in the world, but it has so much going for it. And I think that the more time you spend with it, the more that you realize that looking forward into a technological future isn't necessarily always the answer, and that simplicity wins pretty much every time, especially in my opinion. Let us know what you think though about that. If you prefer screens or physical controls, all of that argument, whether you think the i30 hatch is too old and should be shot, or whether you should be celebrating the fact that it's still alive, or what you think about chasing cars. Thanks for watching.